But let's talk a little bit about the expectations versus reality that we were just having this conversation with here. So we learned Donald Trump will host Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday at the White House. This, of course, comes after he failed to deliver on a ceasefire or, quite honestly, any concrete deal during his meeting with Vladimir Putin yesterday. Now, overall, the expectations going into this meeting were really destroyed by reality, and we can break that down for you. One expectation, Trump and Putin would meet for at least 6 to 7 hours. In reality, that did not happen. The whole visit lasted about 4.5 hours. They did get some alone time, spending at least 10 minutes together in the presidential limo, also known as the Beast. That happened without any interpreters. Now, another expectation was that they would hold an actual press conference, you know, the one where you ask questions of these leaders. Instead, we got 12 minutes of remarks, 0 questions taken from any member of the press, Russian or American. And lastly, Trump built an expectation that he'd be angry if a ceasefire wasn't reached. Instead, the word ceasefire did not come up once during their public remarks. And now the president is dropping his ceasefire demands altogether and instead calling for a peace deal. This, as senior administration officials confirmed that Putin, Zelensky, and European leaders spoke on the phone today about the U.S. being party to a potential NATO-like security guarantee for Ukraine. The letdown as Russia's war rages on in Ukraine comes after Trump himself wavered on expectations after calling the stakes high. Now, here's how he predicted it would all go down. Take a listen.
Could be a good meeting, and we'll go a step further. We'll get it done. I'd like to see a ceasefire very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Mr. President, will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences. All I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly.
I'm going to have a press conference. I don't know if it's going to be a joint. We haven't even discussed it. I think it might be nice to have a joint and then separate.
I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal.
Joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to Russia and MSNBC International Affairs analyst, Ambassador Michael McFaul. Ambassador, it's great to be with you. I know it's been a long 24 hours for you, with little to talk about, but also a lot to try to analyze, right? Because we're trying to make sense of what has happened, when in reality, very little actually came out of that meeting publicly. We are getting some insights into now this idea that President Trump wants to go for a big deal, a peace deal, an all-encompassing type of deal. We don't even know what that means. But just give me your read over the past 24 hours in terms of how this has played out and where you see things going from here.
So first on what just happened over the last 48 hours, we, the President of the United States, not we, invited to our country a dictator. That sometimes happens. But this one's an indicted war criminal, so that doesn't happen hardly ever. This is a guy that kidnaps children from Ukraine and tries to make them into Russians. He bombs civilians, friends of mine in Ukraine, every single night and kills them. That's called terrorism, usually. And against that backdrop, the President of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, decided to have a meeting with him and then decided to invite him to the United States of America. You didn't have to do that. And then, you're showing it, rolled out literally a red carpet for him. And I just think, no matter what happened, you don't have to do that. Yes, in diplomacy, we have to deal with autocrats. I did when I worked for President Obama. But you don't have to check your values at the door, and this felt like that. Some would say, they would say, Mike, you know, you're so obsessed with democracy versus dictatorship. It's all about transactions. It's all about getting deals done, right? Art of the deal. Well, that's our president.
He's trying to make peace.
He's trying to get a deal done. He's trying to, in the language of diplomacy, a deliverable. But you just played a series of sound bites. All of the things he promised to do, he accomplished none of them. Ceasefire didn't happen. A trilateral meeting didn't happen. even a modicum of some kind of incremental progress, they couldn't announce at a press conference, so they canceled the press conference. They had a Soviet-style press conference, right? And I've organized these meetings. I've organized 3 or 4 of these kinds of meetings when I worked for President Obama. It is highly unusual to actually have a menu printed out and then decide, well, let's just skip that. That suggests to me that, okay, maybe all this stuff could have led to a good outcome, but it didn't lead to a deal. I hope it does in the future. I wish President Zelensky well on Monday, but we didn't have to do all of that for what little that we got out of it.
Can I ask you what you thought, and then also what you think our allies, the Europeans, what Zelensky may have thought by some of the visuals, the pomp, the circumstance? You spelled out the red carpet, but also the invitation into the beast.
Yes.
The way the two of them were smiling in the back of the car. The fact that Putin spoke first at that strange press conference.
Yeah.
All things that I don't know. I guess I wouldn't expect for an American president to allow to unfold on our soil with someone like Putin. How bizarre and abnormal was all of this? And how do you think it's being seen by the rest of the world?
Well, from my perspective, it was highly abnormal. I want to be clear. It's unusual. All the stuff you just saw doesn't even happen for our Democratic allies. How many times have you seen any of our Democratic allies, our NATO allies, or allies in Asia treated like that? It doesn't even happen for our partners and allies.
Well, some of our allies are actually afraid to visit the Oval Office right now.
Well, there's that problem too. But that's my reaction. I can tell you the reaction of Ukrainians was deep disappointment. They're tired of this war. They want some hope. They placed their bets in the President of the United States that could he finally get a ceasefire? Could we finally sleep through the night, as one of my friends said? And so the fact that he treated him this way with no results was deeply disappointing. Now, you're not going to hear that from President Zelensky because he has no choice. He has to go meet with President Trump. He has to try to reframe this narrative. You're talking about narratives. Trump just basically accepted Putin's narrative about everything, as far as the reporting that we're hearing about what they actually talked about. So now Zelensky has to try to change that narrative, try to change the frame. He has no choice, but is he disappointed? I think there's no doubt.
Ambassador, there seems to be an integrity gap that exists between, we're talking about narrative, the narrative that is being parroted through talking points from the White House and others and the administration, and then what we're actually seeing and what we're actually witnessing. Yes. The two aren't adding up. The more that the president continues to sort of step forward with this strongman image, which is understandable, it's something that he has to do, but without actually delivering, how much does that compromise whatever leverage he may have on the international stage in terms of other conflicts that may be going on, and his ability to sort of mediate where people look at them and say, we can't take you seriously. You tried that tough talk over here, and Putin was sort of playing you for a fool, and you come over here in whatever conflict you may want to sort of insert yourself, and you have no leverage to insert. So how much does this do to damage whatever leverage he may have on the international stage and other spaces?
That's a great question. I don't think we ask that question enough. We think it's just about Putin, but it's not. And he didn't talk tough. He didn't do anything tough. Let's just be clear about that. He was acquiescent. He was expressing his admiration for Putin. And he thinks somehow, I'm guessing, I haven't talked to President Trump about this personally, but somehow doing this shows respect. But I've dealt with Putin. What he sees is weakness. When he doesn't have to do anything to get that kind of treatment, that in his eyes makes Trump look weak. And I think it makes him look weak all around the world. I think when Xi Jinping's looking at this, he's saying this is the way he treats people that invade countries, invade other places. Well, there is not a great cost to it. And I just think it damages our reputation more generally, as maybe we don't have this mantle anymore. I need to be sober about this. But for decades, the United States was considered the leader of the free world, sure, the democratic world. We met with autocrats and dictators, but we didn't treat them this way. Trump is just giving that away. He doesn't even think in those terms, right? He literally does not think in terms of autocrats versus Democrats. And I think that hurts America's long-term national security interest well beyond President Trump.
So when you look at this meeting from a Russian perspective, and I'm going to ask you to, you certainly know Vladimir Putin more than most. When you go back to Inauguration Day and the fact that you had President Trump saying he was going to end this war in 24 hours, try to make a ceasefire deal, ultimately Putin rejected that. Trump basically begging him on X to stop the killing. Right. Remember when he was going, Vlad, stop, and that didn't happen. He didn't get him to stop the war. He didn't get a ceasefire. He wasn't able to get him to any kind of an agreement, not even to create some kind of mechanism of diplomacy, of regularly scheduled talks. He berated Volodymyr Zelensky. Vladimir Putin gets a red carpet treatment. What does Vladimir Putin think he has achieved over the last 6 months with Donald Trump in office?
Oh, fantastic successes. And the propagandists on Russian TV that work for him, I watch them so you don't have to. They are elated. This is this is beyond their wildest imagination. They thought there was going to be some tough talk. They thought there was going to be some pressure, right? Diplomacy is about, with autocrats, is about pressure and negotiation. This has all been on the latter side, no pressure. And moreover, Putin basically at that press conference hinted the same exact talking points that he's had since 2022. He has not moved his position on Ukraine one tiny inch, and he's paid no price for not moving, at least so far. And I would go back further. I was trying to think of a time when, with all of this engagement, with all this friendship and the clapping when he comes up, that President Trump has done both in his first term and now in his second term. Is there one tangible thing that the American people have gotten out of all of that? Are we more secure? Are we wealthier? Are we defending our values better? I can't think of one deliverable, as we used to say in the State Department, that we've achieved from that strategy. So I hope he changes his strategy, because this strategy is not working.
Can I ask you very quickly before we have to go to break? A lot of the press corps that was there, they reported in the minutes and hours after the presser that they saw members of the administration like Carolyn Levitt look ashen, almost frightened after what they had seen behind closed doors. What did that indicate to you?
Well, first, we should all be glad that we did not go to Alaska, because I was in Helsinki with you and I was in Geneva when President Biden met. They traveled a long ways for nothing in return, those journalists, right? But that suggests to me that this was a bigger disaster than they're leading on. To your point, they're trying to spin it, although they're not even trying to spin it. That's a really interesting thing. When I worked at the White House and we would have meetings like this, I was the SAO, the senior administration official that would call up journalists, that would call the New York Times to say, this is what was discussed, to push it this way. They're not even attempting to do that because they know they don't have anything to work with.
Former Ambassador Michael McFaul, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.